Jorge Gonzalez, Topbin90, episode 12 of the Topbin90 Podcast. We're back after two disappointing results for Charlotte FC. Last time we did this, I was extremely hype, way too hype. The Topbin90 curse came at us again. We're back with my man, Brian. How are you today?
Yeah, well, I think we learned last time that's why you leave that 9 out of 10. Remember, I talked about that. This
You
is a
did.
10 out of 10. I was like, there's always that, you got to have that 1%, 10% wiggle room. And that's where we're at.
And Mr. Sean is back. Sean, how are you, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm refinding my Detroit roots of not being happy about teams.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Well, let's get a little bit into it, Obviously, we're coming off of two very poor results for Charlotte FC, right? I mean, even against New York Red Bulls, the team looked, like even Dean said, like they did still look comfortable. Team looked rusty. And this week, we kind of looked even worse this weekend against Atlanta United, right? I mean, all the shots that they took went straight to the goalkeepers. Our DPs aren't producing, right? I mean, we got Kalina kept us in the match. And so, Sean, talk to me about what stood out to you about Charlotte FC this weekend.
We looked tired. The effort just didn't seem to be up there from our wings up front. Every time the ball would get up toward the top, it's run directly at a defender and lose it. A cross that went to nobody. There just seemed to be no communication or just connectivity between our front four.
Yeah, I think I posted a thread about this as well, but their attackers weren't getting enough touches in the box. At most, they had 3 touches in the box between each of them. So it's just like, that's a huge, huge issue. If your attackers, who are also your big signings, aren't getting touches in the box, you're just not going to have a very lethal attack. And that was, I think for me, it was the first game they had all 3 DPs in the starting lineup at once. So this is a big opportunity to show, hey, we can take control of a game at home against our rival, who also is not playing well right now. Like, they're in 10th. So this was like a big difference between the New York Red Bulls game the week before, when you're up against a team that's likely a playoff opponent. So for me, that was the biggest issue, is that they didn't show up in that moment against your rival, an opportunity against a team that's not playing well, and then to not really dominate the game. I think that was what, for me, was just completely lacking, was just the lack of dominance in a key moment to really take all 3 points, sweep your rival, sweep Atlanta, and I think that was a big missed opportunity.
Yeah, I want to touch on a little bit on that front 3, right? Because theoretically, this is the front 3 that, should be starting. Left wing, Kerwin Vargas, Swiderski up top as the DP, and then Abada on the right wing, right? If you're looking at that's an improvement into what we've had in the past, and this should be your starting front 3. But, none of them have been playing well the last 2 games. I think Vargas against Red Bulls was okay. He drew the penalty, right? But still, we're not seeing enough of him in matches. Soderski hasn't really come back and, lit up things for us. He scored the penalties, which he should, but, we're still not seeing enough from him in Abada as well. He's been poor. And so, when we look at what was brought this transfer window and how this team looks more complete than they used to be, than they were, but I don't see an improvement. If anything, it feels like it's a regression. Sean?
It feels like there's so many parts trying to play together that just aren't connecting. And to me, when we've continued to just try to do the same thing over and over and over again without success. Carroll is not the pressing forward that we've had the rest of the season, and the team's trying to play like he is. And when we need to get him the ball in the middle and have our wingers run out. And they're not making those movements. They're not giving him the opportunity to play the soccer that he plays. And when your best player, in my opinion, Carroll, is not being able to play the game that he's supposed to play, we're not going to do well.
And then on top of that, you have, you talked about the press, not having that cohesion. That's also what led to the goal against as well in this one, because their pressing was not cohesive, which led to Atlanta building up quickly into the midfield, and then the Charlotte midfielders were chasing. Bronico wasn't able to defend well on the play, and everything kind of just, they got behind the ball and the goal went in. So the lack of cohesion in the press not only lets down their attack, but it also is, that's how they're going to give up goals as well if that cohesive press isn't happening.
For sure. And then you also saw the frustration in Dean when at minute 56 he takes off Karol Swiderski and brings in Patrick Ajiman, right? And so, I mean, that's where, like, you know, if you take that front three and you replace him with Yuri Tavares, Patrick Ajiman, and Brandon Cambridge, the level, I would say, wouldn't drop off these last 2 games. And that's an issue because that's 2 draft picks that are in that game, right? And then someone coming in from Crown Legacy, right? Which you're supposed to see. Like, this is what we talk about when you're investing money in DPs and U22s. There should be a drastic difference. And I thought Brandon Cambridge came in and looked good. I mean, he put a threatening ball that the goalkeeper had to get a hand on. And Dean mentioned it in the press conference, right? Like, there was nobody to kind of put that ball away in the box. And so even like Pat, like, he had a good opportunity. He probably had the best opportunity of the match to kind of solidify. But, like, as I kind of still give him grace because he's still theoretically young. Like, he didn't come on big money. So, like, my expectations from him, all right, continue to grow, continue to become a better and better striker.
Well, and then he also was out there for 30 minutes, right? So if you reverse the role and give him 60 minutes, does he get then 4 or 5 more chances? And does he get a goal because he has 4 or 5 more chances? His ability to kind of just stay in dangerous areas in the box is one of his biggest strengths, and that's what has been missing. The lack of touches in the box, which I mentioned earlier. Ajiman gets touches in the box because he stays there. That's where he lives. He stays in the penalty area and tries to find touches there and put them on goal in dangerous areas. And that's just what the team has been lacking in the last stretch of the season.
The energy level just picked up immediately when he came in the game too. I mean, we were on offense the rest of the game from the 57th minute on, other than maybe a counterattack or 2. And I think that a part of the energy level, man, you bring the players up around you, and it's not, to me, it's not Karol leaving, it's Patrick coming on. I think they could cohesively work together and be a great force for Charlotte. We just got to find a way to get them on the field together. I thought the energy lacked on the outsides, and without that, we were just empty. And so you bring in the younger guys who felt like they wanted to be there a lot more than the other 2 did.
Yeah, I like that. That's where I was going to head. Like, Brandon Cambridge is hungry. Yuri Tavares is hungry. Yeah. Pat Ajiman looked hungry in that match, right? And that's kind of what you want, which if you look at our forward line, right, like you mentioned, the play where they scored, they were disinterested, right? None of them pressed. None of them came back, right? And I think that's an important factor to take a look at as well because, last episode that we had, we talked about, will that 3-week stretch affect us, remember? And you were like, probably not, it'll help us. And I was like, it could really affect us, and it really did. We've seen a rusty team. We see a team that's not gelled well just yet. So let's continue to go part by part. Let's go into the midfield now, right? Because even Ashley Westwood, he hasn't been the same Ashley Westwood that we've seen all season. His passing isn't quite there. Brandt didn't have his best game. Pep Biel is kind of getting into the match, right? We've seen flashes. I think the best opportunity in that first half came from a ball that Swiderski played him. He kind of flicked it back and took a shot, but still not dangerous enough. And so that's another thing that I'm looking at when I'm observing this team, right? Like, that midfield is still not cohesive enough.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think, it goes back, we've talked about this many times this season, that Westwood is such a key piece to how far this team can go. And when he's not clicking, the rest of the team just isn't at the level needed to be able to push this team to that next tier. We see when Westwood is on, the team can beat Columbus on the road. They can be, or they tied Columbus on the road and beat Cincinnati on the road, and that's with a Westwood world-class performance. When he's not performing at that level, this team just is, way more average. And so he just needs to be able to, for this team to click and actually make any kind of run in the playoffs, if Westwood's not like at the top of his game, it's going to be really hard for them to make a push.
I think Atlanta noticed that too and actually paid a lot of attention to Westwood. I was watching that first half again today, and there was a man mark or within 3 yards of him at all times. Yeah. He was rarely had a chance to make a move on the ball and play have a moment to play a pass. He had a great quick decisions and wasn't able to play the normal Westwood ball over the top. Fortunately, we had Tim Ream, who was able to play a lot of those balls for us and pretty much generated most of our offense.
Yeah. Who would be, if you're looking at these 2 matches, right, heading into Vancouver? I know it's a little bit early, but what kind of changes? Who would you guys like to see kind of get dropped off, or maybe not even dropped off, but who needs to start? Out of some of the players that you've seen, because I think I would give Brendan Cambridge a go.
Wait, Vancouver? Montreal.
Sorry, I don't know why I
throwing
said
me off.
Vancouver. Why am I thinking of Vancouver?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's Canada, same thing.
Yeah.
They're not even real MLS. No, good catch. For me, Brandon Cambridge has come in and at least look lively. At this point, give him a go if our DPs aren't like clicking, right? Who else would you guys say?
Yuri Tavares, for sure. I think with how poorly Vargas specifically has kind of played over the last year, I think there was a lot of opportunities where he was on the ball and needed to make the final pass or take the final shot, and just, the clinical aspect of his game has not been on. And when that's not, Tavares looks like he brings an extra level of energy. He also has, some of his dribbling ability I think is actually better than Vargas in some ways. Sometimes his like just 1v1 take-on ability is pretty top notch, and he also brings an element of, like, we saw this early in the year when he was getting starts, his ability to just crash into the box and score with his head and just kind of get in and around the dangerous areas and make the final shot and take the final shot from close range, which is something the team is also missing. Like, that nobody's really crashing the box, getting a lot of touches in there, and that's what Tavares can bring.
Yeah, I would like to see some change on the wings, if it's either those guys or if we move Carroll back out there and we put Patrick up top. Yeah. I don't mind them rotating around like they've done in previous games. Yeah. I think that anything right now to generate a little bit more offense, we've got to try something different.
For sure. Even I think we continue to go with Pep Biel, right? Yeah. But it'll be good. Hopefully, I think Jamie Patterson will be available as well. So we could probably see, because he's played the wing before as well. Yeah. Let's not forget that, right? And so he could be somebody that could come in the mix. But this is where, like, we're testing out players still. Yeah.
Yeah. 7 games
in
left.
that with 7 games left, which is why, like, not that I question the move because it makes sense from Charlotte's side, but it's still like when you look around the league, right? Like when I'm thinking of players that are coming to make an instant impact. Did we really have a window where we signed somebody that can have an instant impact in this team, right? Because there's been improvements, but is there a player that you look at that say, okay, this player can really take us to that next level? And right now, I don't think we did.
Yeah, definitely not. And then what's also interesting about specifically the Pep Biel move is now, you spoke about only 7 games left for the season. He only has 7 games left on his loan contract. So, like, he coming in so late on a loan with option to buy, do they have enough time to even make a good evaluation on whether or not to sign him? Like 7 more games, and again, you have to play him, because otherwise, how can you evaluate? If you give him any more games off, you're never going to be able to know whether or not he's actually the guy you want to sign to a longer term deal. So there's a lot of questions there in terms of just what to do with Pep, because you either you have to keep giving him opportunities just to see if you can make an evaluation, to sign him to to his option, that transfer option, or, I don't even know what the other option then is. I guess Jamie Patterson would be the only other creative, attacking threat in that midfield role, because nobody else has really done it. So it's just, there's a lot of question marks that we thought were going to get solved with this transfer window, and I don't feel like any of them did.
Yeah, for sure. We thought Stangs was going to be kind of the guy right now. 2 weeks later, this guy's injured and done for the rest of the year, you know, so.
Zoran genius.
Yeah. Well, see, and I think that's the other point.
Know.
I think that's what the big letdown for the Charlotte FC transfer window is, that people are giving him credit for not making the Stangs deal that's a positive, and it's but there's the big signing didn't come. That should be the letdown.
Exactly.
It's not a good window when you
yeah.
made an evaluation that a player shouldn't be signed because of an injury, and then that's not a
Plus,
good window.
we still went in to try to renegotiate that deal, so it wasn't like we walked away.
Yeah. No.
To me, it's more Charlotte got lucky that they didn't sign him versus, if they really found a problem that was that detrimental, they should have just walked away.
Yeah, 100%.
And should have mentioned that, but they didn't. They tried to renegotiate that deal.
It just seems like we're late, and every single one of these windows, we're just late to the game. We're just behind the 8 ball. maybe I just don't understand it as well, but it seems like we're always rushing at the last minute to try to make something happen, and we're just filling in spots. Yeah. I thought Pep had some great flashes. I think for having maybe 2 weeks worth of practice under him, I thought he had some good flashes. I think he'll end up working really well in that spot. It's just we need to Dean needs to just light a fire and be like, hey guys, like this crowd, these people, these fans, they want you to win. They want you to be successful right now, and you got to want it too. And until they want it as well, we're going to continue to have results like we did on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that's also what's kind of confusing because Bronico mentioned that in the presser after the first game when they drew 1-1 to Red Bulls. We asked him that in the press conference, like, how do you feel about the momentum of this team and what you're pushing to do this year compared to previous seasons? And he's like, yeah, we feel like we're in a stronger position. We can not only hold on to 6th, but we should be pushing for 3rd and 4th. And I think, like, even though like those are the words that he said, it doesn't seem like the play is anywhere near matching kind of like the mentality of what they're saying. Like the mentality on the field is not matching the words that they're saying in the press. I mean, because that was like, they don't feel like they're playing. It doesn't feel like they're playing like they're pushing for a playoff spot right now. It feels like they're kind of just like, I don't know, meandering through middle of the season, but it's like, it doesn't feel like they're at a spot where like, hey, this is the final push. This is the deciding games of where you end up in the standings. And it doesn't seem like that's kind of translating into their play.
For sure. And even like you mentioned, like we've seen flashes from Pep, but we need more than flashes. We need instant impact. He needs instant impact to be considered like, okay, like this is the guy that can take us to the promised land.
Yep.
Like look at, was it Marcel Hartel?
Marcel Hartel. Yep. So St. Louis signed him both early in the window. So this brings up to your point of like whether or not you're late to the window. Signed from Bundesliga to St. Pauli, who won Bundesliga 2 this last year. So he's a champion, peaking. He had 30 goal contributions last year in Bundesliga 2, and he already has 5 goal contributions in like 6 games with St. Louis already. So it's just that instant impact. It was there for signings. They were available. Those types of signings were there. Marcel Hartel didn't get a lot of news, but he's like an under-the-radar type of move. He's a DP level player because he was going to play in Bundesliga this year if he stayed, and they got him, and he's in his prime. He's 28. So those type of moves are there. They're not going to be the headline moves, but those are the types of moves that MLS clubs are making around the league. They're getting them done early in the window, June, July. Austin signed a new DP for like $7 million, I think in July, early enough in the window to get him kind of rotated in. So like moves are there. It just seemed like Charlotte, and Zoran talked about this with Charles Boehm in the MLS article that came out. It seemed like their strategy is there's a trickle-down effect that happens with the higher leagues. As the window progresses, higher-level teams get more desperate to release players, and so teams like MLS can take advantage of that situation. The problem is the windows don't match up. Yep. So like a 3 weeks difference. So like it seems like the strategy that Zoran is using and knows to use is like it just doesn't work because the windows don't match up. So but like that this is going to happen when you're going in. So like, and it's also, this isn't the first time they've used this strategy. This has been 3 straight years where all the signings happened in the last week. So for me, the summer window strategy seems to be a regular occurrence, and it's happened for 3 straight years, and they just really haven't done the deal, I think, in the summer window.
Well, you make a great point. It's like, when do we learn that that's not effective? Like, we're trying to make a playoff push here. We don't need guys that are coming in last minute, having to adjust, having flashes instead of an instant impact. We need guys that are going to come in and make a difference right now, as you were saying earlier.
100%. And I think that's one of the things that worries me a little bit, where you're heading into playoffs, that's when you need to get hot, right? And that's going to be important in the next 7-game stretch, right? Like, you need to go into playoffs with momentum. Right now, it feels like we're going backwards. We're losing momentum, right? And then if we're heading like that won't be good heading into playoffs. Because I think we'll finish 9th. Like, bar Charlotte losing the next 7-8 matches that they have left, right? Then we'll make at least a play-in spot, which is a positive, right? But when you look at this team, who are you confident in this squad that you could say this guy can, if we're having a bad match, can take us to that next level or can put his team on his shoulder? Maybe Ashley Westwood?
But he also hasn't in the last couple of games. So
that's what I'm saying. Like,
it's been Kalina. Kalina's been the guy who's had to pick us up every single day.
He's going to have to go and score too.
We're putting him up for PKs.
Let's go 11v10 in the box on the corners.
I mean, he's been the consistent guy, and I thought that I forget which article it was you guys, but most serious player, Kalina. He's looked like the most serious player, the one that's out there taking it like every game is his last, like he's just playing with his head on fire. And we need that energy to just spread. I think the only other player that can do it and pick the whole team up is Westwood. Right now, no one else is showing that they can do it.
Well, I think like season 1, heading into that last final stretch, I think Carroll kind of carried the team, right, at that point, right? So I think he has the potential to do it. Will he do it is another question, right? But then like you see how hard we're struggling to figure out who could really that's a problem. That's a big issue, right? Because if we think of teams like Cincinnati, you're thinking of Lucho Acosta. If you think of Inter Miami, Messi's not even playing and they're still doing great. They've got other guys that can come in and make the difference. We're not even talking Columbus Crew just yet. You know what I'm saying? So like these teams have players that can make that big difference. Where that's where we're lacking. Where you're like, when I look at that window, this new window, it's an okay window, but still, we still don't have that guy that could be the difference maker. Maybe it could be Pep Biel, but he is more of like playing for a contract versus coming in with kind of that perspective that we had of Calvin Stangs, where like, okay, this is the guy, right? Whether it works out or not, we know he's the guy that they're gonna try. Now it's more like, okay, can Pep be the guy? So our expectations are different, and that's a problem in year 3.
Yeah. Not only be the guy, but then also just be more like consistently the guy. Because I think, like you said, like Carroll has shown moments, but he also disappears from time to time. He has those big games like he did against Chicago Fire, where he kind of like carried the team and brought them back from behind, where he gets a brace, but then he might go 5-6 games where he doesn't score. So you kind of see there's 2 aspects to Carroll that you kind of get, and I think that's just the one issue there. And then Abada's the same boat. There's games where he gets a brace against like Atlanta, but then like we also are seeing long stretches where he's not scoring. So you're kind of seeing all these guys who have the ability or at times will pop off, but just without any consistency, it's hard to count on it. And then you just have a moment like right now where they're all like on a downward trajectory at the same time, and then it's just, how do you get out of that?
Yeah, no talisman player, is what I think. Like there's no like you said, it's the same thing. Like like Carroll and both Abada, there's moments that I see that show you those flashes of DP, right? Like some of the goals they have, like I've seen that from Abada, I've seen that from Carroll. But like you mentioned, like it's got to be a consistent stretch, right? Or if there was another guy that was that, then you elevate a Carroll and an Abada, right? And then you become very, very.
It's just funny because I feel like we've said like, there's just that one other guy, and I feel like that's like, if there's like one phrase to describe Charlotte FC's like entire 3-year span, it's like that one other guy.
Oh, we want it. We want it so badly, and you think that we're sitting here watching these players, and frankly, like you hear good things about all of them, right? And you hear good things about our front office, and the stuff they do in the community, everything's great, but like. Imagine all of those things and the attitudes and efforts of people if we were like a consistently winning team. Like, I mean, I get it was a Labor Day weekend, so granted we'll take that as all, but there's a lot of Atlanta fans there this weekend. That stadium was not all Charlotte, and it was not filled up like it normally is. And is that a result of a vacation weekend? Probably, but is it a result of the fact that the team hasn't been fun to watch in a handful of games? Probably. And until we get back to playing fun, entertaining soccer like we were, a few months ago, we're going to probably continue to go down that trajectory.
Nice. Let's talk a little bit about, so I've asked a couple players this in the post-match media scrums, right, about the first 2 seasons at Charlotte FC, you're chasing a playoff game, right? The advantage this season is that you're solidifying yourself in a playoff spot. Obviously, we've missed 2 golden opportunities to really fight for 4th, right? We're still only 4 points away, incredibly, right, from that spot, which is amazing, right? But you look right next to you, and Orlando's right there now, right? A team that knows how to pick it up, right? So when I'm looking at the past 2 seasons, right, of teams that say finish in that top 6, right? Atlanta United did it last year with 51 points. The year prior, it was Inter Miami with 48. So I think this year is going to take more of that 50 to 52 range to solidify a spot like that, right? The one advantage that Charlotte has, I think, right, heading into these 7 last games is all of these games look like winnable games, which is great, right? So how many points, where do you guys see, where does this team need to be in order to finish in that top 6?
Well, I think I mean you nailed it on the head there. I think it's 10 to 12 points, so that's 3 to 4 wins out of these final 7. A lot of winnable games coming up. I think Montreal, this next game right now, Montreal on the road is a big game for a couple of different reasons. So I mean they got to get a result there because the other teams that are in that same range of 4 to like 8 or 9 are all playing winnable games as well. So you just have to assume 3 points across the board for them, so you have to maintain with 3 points on the road against Montreal. So I think that's the big start. The other big match is how do they perform in the road match against Orlando, who's like one of the hottest teams in MLS right now.
Yeah.
1 loss in 10 games. So
That's probably the one game where you look at, you're like, that's going to be hard,
Like if
Miami doesn't seem too easy right now.
No, definitely not. So they have a couple tough ones, but like if they say even
Florida,
say
the
if
Florida
Orlando
benches.
wins and then they beat. And then Charlotte beats Montreal, and they're still maintaining that 1 point lead against Orlando. But then they lose to Orlando. You have to catch those 2 points up. So I think these next 2 games kind of can decide whether or not Charlotte keeps 6th place in their own hands or not, right? So I think that's the first step to seeing how many points you need is like, can you keep it in your own hands? Can you stay ahead of Orlando? Because like that's going to be the next 2 matches kind of decide that, right? And then after that, can you just maintain whatever Orlando's doing, which I think, again, 10 to 12 points in total.
We've been fortunate to have some results go our way, too, on the other teams in the standings.
Yeah.
So we're still within this striking distance just because other teams are also having a little bit of a iffies right now.
Yeah.
So like
Blame League's Cup.
Yep. Hangover.
Yeah.
we gotta lock in, though. Like, I mean, when other people, this is our time to strike and move forward, and we're fumbling.
Yeah. It's like you mentioned, like, when you look at those last matches, obviously, Montreal away, Orlando away, New England at home, Miami away, Chicago at home, Montreal at home, DC away. Especially those last 3, right? Chicago at home, Montreal at home, and DC away. Those are very winnable games for Charlotte FC, right? And so I think, I mean, like we said, 10 to 12 points is very doable in that stretch, right? Oh, yeah. And like I previously mentioned, like, you're not chasing right now. You're just maintaining that ground. And I think that's very important. And I don't think we've seen this team at all under Dean Smith where they have to be chasing, right? And so, like, we've pulled out results that before were, like, great. Like, even I think it was Chicago. Was it Chicago away where, like, we didn't play well? And that's where Westwood scored.
Westwood hit the banger free kick.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, like, they got, like, that. You need that type of luck from time to time.
Yeah, we can win away games. This is very cool this season that we can do that. Not so much previously, and now that we can actually talk and have a conversation about taking points on the road is nice. Yeah. That's a new luxury under Dean Smith. But also another luxury under Dean Smith is that we don't play 3 bad games in a row. I'm going to knock on wood. But we don't. Like, we have had success when there's 2 bad games, Dean turns it around for the 3rd one. So I have high expectations going into Montreal. I think that's a winnable one, and we should win those last 3. Everything in between is kind of a toss-up.
Yeah. What do you guys think are some of the things that I guess he could do to regroup this team heading into Montreal? Because now they got a bye week again, so like that could affect them again. Yeah. Also, you've got Karol Swiderski with Poland. You've got Tim Ream with U.S. men's national team. You've got Abada with Israel. Even Toklomanti, who's not part of the first team, he's with the U23 Israeli team, I think. Even Toloma, who doesn't really play, but he's with New Zealand. So you've got pieces missing, right? And so you can't just focus these next 2 weeks with everybody, right? So
we have another back going too, don't we?
We have a what?
One of our backs is going too, right? Why am I blanking on the name?
Scotland. Oh, yeah, Jere to Finland.
Yep. Finland.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're missing players. And so how do you make sure you come back from that international break hot when you're missing key players, 1, and 2, you haven't been playing well?
Well, I mean, you touched on it earlier, Sean, but I think is Dean Smith willing to make some of the rotations to kind of light a fire under some of these guys, especially maybe the guys who are considering themselves kind of maybe untouchable in some ways, like the DPs up top? Is Dean Smith willing to kind of rotate let some of these guys who have been subbing in and kind of changing the dynamic of how the game is played for Charlotte? And can they, will he just be willing to make one of those changes? I think Ajiman honestly stands out as the likely change because of his willingness to sub out Swiderski in the 56th minute. For me, that was a very telling sign. I mean, because Dean Smith has done that all year. When he subbed Diani out early in the game, he ends up kind of maybe rotating him out and not playing him. So those moments when Dean Smith is making the early sub has oftentimes translated to him maybe benching a guy for a game or two to kind of just see whether or not there's another way to kind of move forward. And I could see that being one of the areas that he does. Maybe or he rotates somebody else and lets Carroll and Ajiman play together, which is what I think a lot of the fans want. But Dean has also been really adamant about kind of keeping his formation the same. So we'll kind of see. But I think that would be, for me, the move that I would kind of expect. Just based on Smith's history, when he subs a guy out early, there's a decent chance they get rotated out.
Yeah. Plus, you add that factor of, Swiderski just went to Poland.
Yep.
And with the Polish national team.
Yeah.
Right. So I could. Yeah, you're right. I could easily see him saying to Pat and either Cambridge or Yuri or whoever, you guys are gonna start against Montreal. I don't know what his conversations are with the players. But if he's setting a certain expectation, these next 2 weeks, you need to make sure that you're on it, right? Because you will be the first name called in that front line, right? And I know these guys are chomping at the bit to be, to make a difference in the team. They have to.
It's a new luxury this season to have a kind of a calming sense that I know that our coach will get it right, though. I think I know that he'll come into this game and he'll make certain decisions, and they'll be the right ones. We have not had the luxury as Charlotte fans.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I know that Dean's going to do it. He's going to get it right, and he's going to right the ship here. And we're not even panicking, really.
Yeah.
As Charlotte fans, we're not, because they're just all right, a couple bad games.
It's frustrating, but we're not panicking.
We're not panicking.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Don't have me on in a month when we're panicking. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we lose 4 in a row. We all start really panicking.
Yeah.
The Sean curse.
But yeah, I mean, this is a big moment because Dean Smith, like you said, I mean, he's righted the ship every time. I don't think they've lost more than 2 in a row all season. This is probably the longest stretch without getting a win, this year in terms of having, 5 without a win if you're including Leagues Cup, but then, a couple draws and then the loss with just MLS play. So this is definitely a big moment for Dean to then right the ship again and be like, hey, look, we're getting a win and we're not having a continuous winless streak, because those are the moments that set you back. That's how you lose spots in the standings. You gain spots with those 2 or 3 wins in a row because that's all it really takes to get back into things. But at the same time, you drop points for 2, 3, 4 matches. You find yourself in 7th or 8th when you were, pushing for 4th. That's kind of what MLS can do to you. So I think this is a big match for Smith right now. I think this is maybe one of the bigger ones of the season. Not in terms of the matchup, because Montreal is not a strong team, but maybe actually makes it even more important because you have to get the points there. But just how Charlotte is, in terms of how they've been playing over the last stretch.
Yeah, and it's nice to know too that Dean's done more with less. And so that's a very important point something to point out as well, that I know he's got to be frustrated. It's I've put a better team on paper and we're not getting the results. And in May, when I let go of Enzo and really only had Pat up top, because Abada was injured, right? We were producing and getting better results, which is wild. But that's the beauty of MLS, right?
I think our captain will help too. I sat and watched at the end of the game, and he may have just been waiting for someone from Atlanta to come give him a jersey, but he watched those Atlanta players take pictures and sign jerseys for a really long time at the end of the game. While the rest of the guys started more up and running, he was still out there just standing, staring. And I think that maybe it's one of those moments where you look and you see, I hate these people celebrating in my stadium, because I did. But it might have just been he was waiting on someone. I'm really overreading it. But to me, you look on his face was not of happiness. It was of I hate this. It's not happening again.
Yeah. Well, even I like that a lot about Ashley Westwood, where he's gonna make sure that these guys, obviously they had 2 bad games, but we need to make sure the standard stays high.
Yeah.
Which
and he
is
mentioned
important.
that in the press conference as well. He really hammered that point home. He did that as well last year when they had that big thrashing against, I forget which game it was, but there was a moment when Westwood really was like just called it out in a big way as well. So there's those moments when Westwood stands up and really says like, hey, this is like the standard. We're not hitting the standard, and he's very blunt about it. He's very unforgiving to himself and to his own teammates. So I think, yeah, this is a big moment for Westwood. I agree with you on that, Sean. Like, this is a big one.
Yeah, and Dean is too. Like in the press conferences, he mentioned, hey, we're not good enough. We're not doing well enough in the final third. Like, you're right. Like, he's not beating around the bush.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, we had a few moments. They weren't good enough. We need to do better. Like, okay. Like, okay. Like, we really lose our questions when he's just blunt, honest about what the team really needs to do to improve. Right.
Yeah.
So. Cool, awesome. Let's touch a little bit on the Charlotte FC Academy, right? U16s with a phenomenal result against PSG's Academy, right? Like, I mean, like, that's pretty big. One, because when you think of hotbeds of talent pools around the world, and I think it was Arsene Wenger who said this, that you think of Paris, right, as a big one. Sao Paulo, I think he mentioned as well. So, and then for the Charlotte FC Academy to go out there, right, first of all, be playing in Paris and pull a result like that, I think it speaks volumes as to where, you know, Charlotte, this group of players that I've heard, I think from you and a couple other people, like, there's a lot of talent in that academy. So, I mean, you've spoken to a guy like Brian Scales before. You've done articles about the academy. Talk to me about just how big of an impact this could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just continues to highlight this specific group that's coming up. This U15 age group, Brian Scales was really excited about towards the end of last year. It seems like a very special group. Now, I don't know how many of these guys were on the trip to France, because a lot of them were getting moved up to the U17, which is now a U18 team. So that's how good they were. Brian mentioned that he was thinking there like 4 or 5 guys from the U15 team last year would get moved up to the U18. So they're playing a couple years up. That's how talented this group looks to be. But they're obviously, with the remaining players that are left, there's still plenty of talent there because they're beating the PSG team at U16 level. So I think it's a good start to the year, because I think they ended a little bit underwhelming. The U15 team didn't make it as far in the MLS Next Cup as I think they expected to make it. Brian made it seem like they were a very, very, very strong group that could make a deep run. The U17 team did last year. They made it to the final. But But see, so the U15 team had to play the LA Galaxy early. They also got beat by LA Galaxy in the U15 level. So that's just also LA Galaxy. That area is a real hotbed for talent. Real hotbed for talent. I mean, it's probably the best market in MLS is Los Angeles. So, I mean, it's just always tough to get past those guys at that level. But I would say it's a great win for that group so early on. And shout out to their Twitter page. Now you can really follow along with the academy. You can actually see you could see the whole trip. Like, they had a Malanda clip as well. He was joking around, teaching them French.
The content team does a great job.
Yeah. And so they have I like that they're finally doing that more at the academy level too. So you're giving these kids a chance to shine a little bit more than maybe in years past, whereas kind of like a lot of it was under the radar. So they're starting to get some shine and some love, because there's a lot of kids coming. I mean, there was 7 academy kids on the squad for the Crown Legacy match this last weekend, and they're getting regular starts. A lot of these guys are. Aaron John is one of the best players in MLS Next Pro right now. He has like 17 goal contributions after this last game, and
that's a name that's kind of under the radar, but is doing a lot of great things.
Yeah, 100%. And he might win MLS Next Pro Player of the Year. I think he's in that conversation. So, as well as a former MLS Next Pro Crown Legacy player, David Pareba, who's leading the league in goals for Chicago Fire 2 right now.
Nice, yeah. Well, I think it's great. I mean, earlier, I remember I had a bad angle, but a picture of Nimfasha being a ball boy for Chelsea versus Charlotte FC, right? And look how much progression he's made. Where, I mean, I don't think he's a guy that's going to be in Charlotte that long, right? Once he turns 18, European teams are going to start calling. I mean, he already had a trial at Bayern Munich, so it's kind of cool seeing the Carolinas are producing good players.
Yep. People are calling Charlotte the LA of the South.
That was great. Speaking of the LA of the South, I do want to talk a little bit also about, the Supporters Belt tournament, right? Obviously, like the game got suspended because of weather. The tournament got suspended over the weather, but fourth annual Supporters Belt tournament presented by Ally, right? I mean, they did a great job, right? Like it's really like it feels very professional, these tournaments, bro. And some of the stuff that they had out there, they had food for the players, a 360 camera. They had like a bracket as well, like
real refs.
Yeah, real refs, right?
From where we were 2 years ago when I played in that tournament to where we are now is night and day. We used to play in the Panthers Dome. It was the charity soccer 658. They had one of their players reffing each game, so like a 16, 17-year-old kid who just did not want to get yelled at. And now it's, with Ally helping out, you have 4 games going on at once, huge fields, music playing, the background setting, food, great little gift bag we got. I mean, I had a great time. You got a nice little clip of me getting burnt. Yeah. But I wish you would have been there when I burnt one person before that. But I also found out, dude, like I had about 3 minutes of running within me for about a total split out between 3 games. So I would go out there, I'd make my one sprint, try to have a goal contribution, and be like, I'm subbing myself off. Next year I'm gonna train a little harder, but no, it was a great tournament, man. I think hopefully they continue and they end it at some point. We can get a winner, finalize it, and that team can practice against Charlotte to keep them in shape.
Yeah, that's great. We were out there and I'm like, yo, this is spectacular. Just the level that like Ally and Charlotte FC like that they put out for this, like it's very intentional. It's not like they're just throwing people out there and let's see what happens. Like you mentioned, like referees, right? Even before, Sean brought in the captains to talk about the rules, right? And so there's also a clip on me of like banging in a goal too. What is that thing even called? I don't know what that, like.
The Topbin goal scoring.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. I mean, but I just think, to your point, I think it was just also interactive because like there's like families were there, right? So
Yep.
Families of the supporters were there, supporting their dads, moms and dads, on and stuff like that. So just the fact that there was stuff for the kids to do as well. I mean, there was a lot. That's what we were playing with over there when we were shooting. We were playing with kids who were shooting at that, whatever you call that thing. And so just the fact that it was like super interactive and kind of like family centric, I think was really just cool element. That was the first time I've been to the Supporters Belt event, and it was
competitive,
awesome.
it was fun, it was well put together. It was really impressive showing from the team there.
Nice, yeah, I loved it. Hopefully they can reschedule the last part of that tournament, right? Obviously, like it's when you host things, it's a lot. From previously hosting stuff, how much work it takes, and like having 100 people out there, something like that. That's a lot.
There had to be a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Out there, yeah.
Perfect, awesome. And then I'll end it with like, what are you guys hoping to see from Charlotte? Heading into, obviously we have a bye week this week because of international matches, so we won't be able to get mad or happy this weekend, right? We'll just be neutral. But what are you hoping to see from the Charlotte team heading into these last few matches of the season? Because it's going to end soon, and so we're going to be like, dang, that was quick, right? Like, I remember when the team got postponed a year, like the inaugural season, I was like, dang, it's going to be forever.
Yeah,
we're 3 years in now, so it goes by quick. But what are you expecting to see from Dean Smith's side these last few matches?
I'm debating saying the exact opposite of what I want to see, just because it seems to work out that way every single time. But I'll give you the truth. I think I see we win 5 of these last 7. We go into playoffs super hot.
Dang, okay.
That's what I want to see, and I think it's there. I think he's twiddling right now. He's got new pieces to put in, and he's going to get it figured out. It's going to be like that game Operation. He's going to shock it. The whole thing's going to go up.
Nice. Yeah, I mean goals. I want to see some goals, open play goals, right? I think that's the big one. Recovering and getting the win against Montreal to stop the bleeding, like Dean Smith has done all season, and then also that final stretch. You mentioned those winnable games at the final stretch during October. Charlotte have been a very good October team. I think they've only lost once in October as a club so far. October's a good month. And then they've got 3 very winnable games, and almost all of their winning streaks. They haven't had a super long one, but all their short 3-4 game winning streaks have included a Chicago Fire game. So it's a stretch where I think they should really be targeting and getting 3 straight wins in a row to end the year.
The heavy hitting facts for the last four.
Yeah.
Nice. I want to see what I'm going to deem the Fantastic Four start cooking. And that's Karol Swiderski, Liel Abada, Pep Biel, and Ashley Westwood. That's my Fantastic Four. So I need them to cook these last 7 games. The Charlotte FC Fantastic Four, right? Like, these are the players that I think can make the difference in this stretch. And they got to prove it these next 7 matches. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I didn't just burn all these players.
I knocked on wood for
Vargas
you. I don't know if you
is
saw it.
about to start cooking, dude. Vargas is gonna start cooking,
I was
bro.
back here going right like this, just as quickly as I could.
With that said, Brian, my man, where can we find you at?
Yeah, y'all can find me on Twitter at BAM Mauer Media. You can also find all my written content at Topbin90.com.
Nice.
You
Sean?
can find me on Instagram at Sean Gartley or just commenting on all of Jorge's stuff.
Nice. And as you know, Jorge Gonzalez, Topbin90. We also just released a really good pod with Karol Swiderski, right? So this is the second time we've gotten a chance to interview him. So shameless plug there. Go watch that. I think with Karol, just because of the way he is, people really can't see the type of person he is. But he's a really good dude. And like once you get to know him, he's pretty funny as well. So watch that podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like everything that we do, right? And till next time. Actually, here's the last thing I want to say. Hopefully, this person confirms with me, but I have a very, very special guest that I'm trying to lock in for the next time we do this pod. Not saying any names just yet, but it's going to be a good one. Good.